In the 1890s, the men who built the Orange Belt Railroad tracks lived in an area called Pepperstown. As the community grew, it expanded around what is now First Avenue South and became known as Cooper's Quarters. That was the beginning of what eventually became known as the gas plant area. Starting in the late 30s, St. Petersburg began to push black residents south in the name of tourism. But this part of gas plant story really starts in 1978 when the city passed an ordinance allowing them to start moving residents by eminent domain with an eye to a baseball stadium. In '79, they built I-375 through gas plant, and in 1980 started to make I-275. Around that time, people started receiving notices that the city was going to buy their houses. That's where our project picks up. We partnered up with the Neighborhood News Bureau, the Carter-Woodson, and the Weekly Challenger, and began going through dozens of boxes of thousands of records of the eminent domain paperwork. We held oral history events at the Carter-Woodson and began reaching out to the community, especially the older community, for oral histories. This is a map of the gas plant area with the footprint of Tropicana Field. The goal is to fill it in. Removing residents and businesses went in 4 phases, marked on this map. The center one, phase 4, is where we start. So Corona busted up our efforts, but let me just walk you through what we had. This is the start of the folder. This is the opening page that shows everything. These are facing pages that essentially give a timeline. These are the appraiser's drawings and appraiser's pictures. Now these are cool because we can Google view these someday. They have information about where they stood, the size of the house, or where they stood when they made the pictures. And they have the back, front, and there's 2 appraisers, so we have 2 sets of pictures. Here's what the 2 appraisers gave them: a certified letter stamp. There should be the condition of the property, the people's signatures, the check they received. It's a wealth of information, and it tells a pretty complete story, not only about the people involved, but the properties. And there were some really nice family homes, and there were also some pretty rundown properties. People are being pushed towards Jordan Park and other neighborhoods probably for about a decade before this. So these files are labeled box number, phase number, plot number. And so we put that on this Excel sheet. There on the right is phase 4, so you can see, that just went away, but so you can see where we are on each one. And I'll zoom in here. And you can see this one is the one that's on home plate. And so we have the zoning, we have the property description, we have a little place for a narrative, we have the position on the field if it is a position, we have the appraisals, what the final sale price was, the closing date. Of course, we have the owner's name, next of kin's name, surviving kids, any contact numbers currently possible for who we might contact for oral histories. So kind of a cool story. The home plate resident was Newbron McGee, and I was at a Jordan Park residence reunion, and I was talking to Mr. Corrington. I knew from pulling newspaper clippings that Newbron McGee was a custodian for decades at Davis Elementary, and Mr. Corrington lived across the street from Davis Elementary. So I kept asking him about Newbron McGee, and he said, no, nothing. I said, he was a custodian? He said, oh, Pops McGee. And it ends up that he had an institutional memory about Pops McGee, his family. He used to go over and help Pops clean up after school for nickels and dimes. So Mr. Corrington's in his 90s, so I didn't waste any time and went over to his house and heard a little bit about gas plant back in the day.
I was born on 9th Avenue in 1930. And the lot where my house was is still there. Every once in a while I go by there and look at it. And I'm trying to remember. We stayed right in front of Davis School. Papa D was the custodian. We'd go and help him in the evening. We'd come and help him take out the trash or something. You know, he'd give us nickels and dimes, pennies. Moultrie, you remember Moultrie? He had a little, he had a shoe shine shop, but in the back he sold drinks, bootlegger, and numbers. He was a number writer, and he was right there. We called it Bolita, Cuba, and that's what he did. He was a nice dresser. He dressed nice. He was a town hustler. He was a hustler. He was a crook. That was a big thing back in the day. Bolita. But he called it Cuba. We bring it Cuba. You spend a nickel and you buy your numbers and then they roll them that night. If you parlay for a nickel. If you parlay, you got $100. Everybody's playing them numbers, playing the numbers. But he's dead. You wouldn't see him now. He saw Moultrie, but he's older than me because he's much older, so I'll be 90 in June, so Moultrie will probably be up about 100 now. There was across the street from Moultrie, there was a dry cleaners called Brown's Dry Cleaners. I was in that building, across the street from Papa Gee. And also in that building, there was it was a dance hall upstairs over Cat's Grocery. They had a dance hall. Then around the competition, up there, behind it, used to be a stockade back there, where the jail. We called it the stockade. That was it.
So thinking about wireframing this in terms of Posner's sources, processes, and presented, that's our data. The one thing we haven't gotten that we actually have a lead on is the longitude, latitude GPS data. But there's a guy, Derek, in the municipal records who's currently furloughed who believes he can help us with that. In terms of presentation, I really like StoryMap. I found this example from Arlington, Virginia, 1920 that would have a lot of parallels with what we would want to do. And also this geographic out of Eden presentation shows how photographs and videos, and in our case oral histories and the archival photographs, could be displayed by location. And there's a lot of flexibility for what we could do once we have that GPS information that you just saw. This is really cool because they're using the technology to invite community participation, which is something we would be super interested in. Once this is up and running, it could be an ongoing dialogue with the community to submit their family photos, their family memories, and we could put them on the map, news on the map, which brings me to sort of a closing point that this is a great way in the immersion. We can apply digital humanities scholarship in ways that provide public service, reclaim buried history, benefit the community, and in this case, inform people about important issues in the news, like redevelopment. So I think that's the time I have, and thank you guys.